We're proud to welcome you to the Exceptional Advisor podcast series, brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute. This series aims to help you to better serve your clients, differentiate yourself from the competition, and enhance your ability to communicate those differences. Hi, I'm your host, Bob Powell. My guest today is Robert Sofia, CEO of Snappy Kraken and author of Blend Out: From Ordinary to Irresistible, How Advisors Can Market Like the Greatest Brands in the World. Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here today.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get going, for the benefit of our listeners who may not be familiar with you and your work, do you mind giving us a brief overview?
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't want to talk about myself too much. I'll just put it really simply. I've been in marketing for 20 years. I've been marketing for advisors for the last 15. The first 7 or 8 was actually in a practice, in an RIA that I grew from about 150 million to almost $1 billion in assets. And then I started applying those same principles to helping other advisors. And now I've helped almost 10,000 advisors between my two businesses with their marketing over the last 15 years.
Great. So you've also written a book. We mentioned Blend Out. Let's start here. I mean, in terms of who the book is intended for, wirehouse brokers, RIAs, IBDs, duly registered. Is there an intended audience?
Yeah, well, the book is a lot of principle and example-based marketing insights. So it applies to a variety of businesses. I did tailor it to advisors, which could be any type of advisor. In fact, I've had advisors of all different types read the book and the enterprises that support them and apply the principles. So the reason I tailored it to advisors is because I think nobody lays out these types of marketing principles in a way that's directly relevant to them. And so I really tried to use examples from the past, how I've helped advisors or what I did when I was part of a practice to make these things a reality so they could relate to it. I would say any advisor and anybody who supports advisors will find this relevant.
Right. So one of the principles, I mean, the book is chock full of great examples and actionable advice. And in the first chapter, I think you talk about advisors should make themselves impossible to ignore. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, well, if you think about any relationship, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship, it always starts with an introduction. At some point, there's an introduction, whether it happens online or offline, doesn't matter the environment. And why do introductions happen? They happen either because you notice somebody and you take the initiative to talk to them, or they notice somebody and they notice you and take the initiative to talk to you, or somebody introduces you. Like that's basically like, even if it's online, right? You have to get noticed first. You have to notice somebody. Like everything starts with being noticed or getting a direct introduction. So advisors are usually pretty good at getting introductions, and we talk about some of the ways to help them get more introductions. But where they often struggle is meeting new people, getting new opportunities. And whenever I talk to advisors, they always say, I just wish I had more opportunities. I'm great once I have the opportunity. And so that's the problem. But then when you look at the industry, most advisors just sort of blend in. It's a conservative industry. When we get into this industry, we don't really always know what we're doing, and so we end up copying what other leaders in the industry are doing, and so it creates a homogenization across the industry. Everybody just kind of looks the same. So when you say, okay, hold on a second, I'm not going to try to look and be and sound and act like everyone else. I'm going to be unique. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be bold. And when you actually take that action, you stand out. That means you get more introductions. So the whole point is, if you can get noticed more, you get more opportunities. And a lot of this book is about how to do that through your branding and your marketing.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting in a world where everyone seems the same, and in an industry that's so heavily regulated in terms of what advisors can say or can do or can't do. You talk about this trifecta of awareness, boldness, uniqueness, and memorability. Talk maybe a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so if we want to use a real life example, each of those elements is important, but let's just take boldness, right? Let's say that you have a sign up at the ballpark where the kids play every weekend, and it's a sign for your practice, and it's on the fence tied up with all the other signs. Now, if you just put your logo on it and you just have a plain Jane logo and it's on the fence, and people are just going to be out there and they're probably just scanning right past it. But if you make it really big and really bold, people are going to notice it, right? So that applies to that example. I gave an example of how I helped an advisor with something simple. They had a placemat in a local diner where they had their business card on it, but so did everybody else. And their business card looked just like the realtor's business card and just like the attorney and the CPA's business card. And so we made a really bold, are you losing money on taxes? Dark, filled, bold statement. Well, they started getting calls. They started getting noticed. Now that's boldness. Boldness gets you noticed, but then that's not enough, because just getting noticed is a flash in the pan. So you have to be remembered, and you have to create curiosity. And that's where the uniqueness and the memorability come into play. So, these build on each other, and that's the trifecta. So for example, once you get noticed, then whatever you have done to attract attention needs to lead to curiosity. It needs to make people say, well, hold on a second. I don't know the answer to that. I need to find out more. I've never seen this before. Because what happens when we see something we've already seen, or we perceive that we already know about it, we lose interest. So you have to use these curiosity loops to try to open up the door for a conversation, open up the door for questions, create the desire to investigate. So, we use certain types of taglines and certain types of headlines that say things like, uncover these hidden opportunities. Okay, now the person goes, hold on a second, uncover what? If it's covered, I don't see it. Hidden, what do you mean? I don't know about it? Or discover these secrets of top investors. And they go, oh, wait a second, hold on. Well, there's secrets of top investors. So we arouse curiosity. Now people start investigating you. That's good. Those are the first two steps. But now, even if you get that going and then people get distracted, they get busy, if they're online, the phone rings, they click away. So you also want to be remembered. You want to create this mental space where people know you. And that's where memorability comes into play. And I could go on and on about this. I mean, I did write a book about it, but I'll stop talking in a moment. Just to finish the trifecta, though, and we can dig deeper into any one of these if you'd like. To be remembered, you have to evoke an emotion. And that's how our brains work. We remember the emotional experiences. We remember pain. We remember joy. We remember funny things. And if you ask somebody to remember a completely non-emotional experience, they virtually can't do it, because it's the emotional experiences that get filed. So if you can start also evoking emotion, positive emotions associated with your brand are especially powerful, then people remember you. So ultimately, the point is, when you use boldness, uniqueness, and memorability together, you get noticed, you motivate people to learn more about you, to investigate, and you claim a piece of mental space so that even if they don't need you today, when they do, they'll think of you. And we do this with our own brand. I mean, people, they look at us and they say they could never do what we do, and that's true because it's a different space. But you can do it in other ways. People see Snappy Kraken, they're like, "What is that?" First thing they do is they get curious, they laugh. What is this? That sounds funny. And what I hear over and over again is, once you've heard our name, you can never forget it. And that is an example of us using the exact same principles I teach advisors how to use in this book.
Right. So I'm curious, as you think about the advisor marketplace at the RIA level, it might be easier than it is at the wirehouse level, perhaps where you're working within certain constraints, or is that not true?
No, it is true. When you are independent, you can make these choices. You can do it with your brand. You can do it with your advertising. You can do it with the videos you produce. And there are a lot of advisors doing a great job. When you are in a wirehouse and everything is done by your corporate office, then you don't have as much autonomy. Now, there are definitely some wirehouses that have done a better job at this over the years, and there's been some ad campaigns that they've really done effectively, and that's great. I think at the individual advisor level, where it gets a little more challenging is you can't always do this with your marketing. But in some cases, depending on the firm, you can do it with your social presence. In some cases, depending on the firm, they allow you to do certain things related to your client experience that can make you more memorable. They may allow you to use certain channels in ways where you have some autonomy. So it's harder but it can be done. And frankly, there are even some advisors who do it just by their personality and their interactions. Um, if you compliment someone, if you're really, really great at finding something specific, complimenting them, and making someone feel good about themselves, and you do it genuinely, well, you'll be remembered. People will remember you. And that's just one small example. But the point is, there are ways to do it, but it is more challenging in a wirehouse environment.
Yeah, and the other challenge, maybe you can comment on this, is this: you talk about no one that always be one of a kind, and in a world where someone says, "Oh, I specialize in retirement planning," or "I specialize in comprehensive financial planning," or "I do investment portfolio management," blah blah blah, it becomes hard to be one of a kind when all you're doing is something similar to the person across the street.
That's true. Absolutely.
So how would you address that, like, in a world where there are just those many, those basic services are always being offered?
So if you're really honest about our industry, you have to acknowledge that it's very, very hard at this point to differentiate with service or product. I mean, it can be done, but it's very, very difficult. And that's why the book really focuses on how to do this with marketing. One of the best ways to approach this is to take whatever you are doing in this industry and apply principles from outside of the industry. You'll find if you start monitoring what other tangential industries do, what look at what CPAs do, even what dentists do, what other industries are doing, and find ideas, find inspiration. You can often adapt the things you're doing in our space to the trends or what other leaders are doing outside, and then it ends up looking like a completely new approach. So let me just give you an example of that. So retirement planning. Lots and lots of advisors do retirement planning. So I used to do a lot of marketing in a retirement community, very large. It was called the Villages, Florida. A lot of people know about it. Hundreds of thousands of retirees live there, and there is an advisor on every corner. There is a seminar where you can eat free lunch every day. And some people would say, oh, it's such a great environment for advisors. I would say it's the worst because there are a lot of prospects, but there are just as many advisors, and it's incredibly difficult to differentiate. Well, that's the environment where I cut my teeth in marketing back in the early 2000s, marketing for advisors. So we could send out a seminar mailer, and they already had 10 in their mailbox. It was virtually impossible. So the differentiation became a big aspect of this. So let's take retirement planning. Guess what? Our firm did retirement planning too. And so did every other advisor in the area.
Yeah.
So here's an example. You go to the local magazines, you ask for an ad. You go to the local billboard companies, you ask for an ad. And what do? They come in there with their photographers. They take great pictures of you in your suits. They absolutely stroke your ego. They tell you how good you look. They build a beautiful, shiny ad for you with you in your Navy suit. Just like every other advisor, you say, I look good. And so you run that ad. It goes on the billboards. It goes in the magazines. And everybody's flipping through the magazine. And it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Okay. So, and then if you think about the retirement ads, what happens? Everybody, if they say, no, I don't want it to be about us. I want it to be about the customer. I want it to be about the client. Okay, great. So what are your clients like? Well, they're retired. Okay. What do they like to do? Well, they like to golf. Okay, big golf. Okay, great. So they put the picture of the retiree golfing. And then you look through you look just like the pro shop ads. This is the nature of advertising. It's too literal. So how do we break the mold on that? So we ended up doing a whole ad campaign, and we ran it for about a year. And every month we changed the ad, and it was on billboards, radio, magazine. It was on our mailers. And so the ad series was called Live Richly, and it was Live Richly, you've earned it. That was the point. But what we did is we took activities that retirees do not typically engage in that look very exciting and different from everything else anybody else in the area was doing. So one of our most popular, got the highest response rate. We actually took a retiree he had crazy hair, he had goggles on, He was upside down. So you're flipping through this magazine. Now you find this white-haired, crazy-haired guy with goggles on, upside down. Well, he was skydiving is what he was doing. So in the magazine, you're flipping, and then you stop and you go, hold on a second, and then you're curious, right? So it's bold. It makes you curious. You zoom in, and what does it say below? You've worked hard all these years to save for retirement. Now's your chance to enjoy it. What kind of experiences are you empowered to enjoy? Here's how we help our clients, one small paragraph. And you use the right type of curiosity-evoking headlines and text to get them to take the next step. So it's a small example, but it speaks to what you have to do. You have to be true to the offering, but you have to present it or package it in a way that looks different from everybody else. And it can be done. It just takes some creativity and some courage, because it's not the easy traditional thing to do.
Yeah. So in the book, you talk about something that I'm always curious about. The industry always faces what at times is called a trust hurdle. And you talk about the need to answer, can I trust you, before your prospects ask you that question. Talk about that.
Well, trust is at the core of our business. And over the years, I've talked to a lot of advisors who, when I share this concept, frankly, they don't like it. It makes them uncomfortable because they say, I just want to be trustworthy. I am trustworthy. Why would I have to do things to help me be perceived as more trustworthy? Like, that doesn't make sense. I just want to be trustworthy. So that's the objection I often get. And you know what? At the root, it's true. You absolutely have to be trustworthy. No doubt about it. Otherwise, you don't belong in this business. However, people who don't know you yet, with whom you have not earned trust, need to have a basis to come to the conclusion that you are as trustworthy as you are. And that can be done or accelerated, because if you think about what really earns trust, it's time. So we've just met, Robert. There's a measure of trust because we're in the same industry, because we're at respected companies or respected publications. But you and I personally, we don't have deep trust. Now, if we started spending time together every week, every month, every year, doing things, going places, maybe, you spot me 20 and I pay you back. And then you build the trust. Right. Well, how do you do that in a brand new relationship? So what I teach is how to actually produce trust signals, or I call them signals of credibility. Because if a stranger is over here on the spectrum and they don't know you or trust you, and a friend is over here because they do know you and trust you, then the more that they experience reasons to trust you, that they end up over on this end of the spectrum. So what we try to do is condense all those interactions into a tighter window so people trust you. I'll give you a few examples. You have all this, press mentions, media mentions over the years, blog posts published in publications. What do you do with those? Well, at our office, we had every single one of them framed, every single one. And they were on the wall in the hallway going down to the conference room where we would meet with clients. So they would see these signals of trustworthiness, right? Credibility. There's an advisor I work with. We didn't do this, but I think it's amazing. All their clients bring in pictures of their children and grandchildren, and they have a big wall where all the children and grandchildren of their clients are. Now, they bring a prospect in. Prospect sees it and says, who are all these kids and grandkids? Those are the kids and grandkids of my clients. Every day I come to work, I look at those pictures and I'm reminded why I do what I do. Okay, now, that means a lot of people already trust you. That's a signal of trustworthiness. Third example, we would always stack our appointments in our office between clients and prospects. So every prospect would come in between two clients. On the way in, we would introduce them to the client. On the way out, we would introduce them to the client. Now, when you introduce a prospect to a client and you tell the client, hey, this is John. He hasn't worked with us before. He's considering it. What does the client automatically do? You don't ask them. You don't have to. They just go, oh, you're going to love working with Robert. He's amazing. He's such a great advisor. We've been with him for years. He's helped us so much. Okay, now, prospect gets that on the beginning of the meeting. Prospect gets that on the end of the meeting. You're building trust. So how you use the client experience, your marketing and your PR, and how you put all these things together, and even in interactions, how you ask questions and really get deep to diagnose things before you make recommendations. All these things, when you put them together, what happens is people walk away and they go, wow, that seems like somebody I can really trust. And that can all happen within a span of the initial interactions you find online, because there's consistency of message, consistency of brand, all the way through into that first meeting, and you accelerate the trust building process.
So you may have hinted at this earlier. You talked in the book in chapter 7, you talk about how people aren't buying goods or services from an advisor, they're buying transformation. Um, Talk about that.
Well, it's very easy to talk about what we do as advisors. We do financial planning, we do wealth management, we do asset management, we do retirement planning. But those aren't the things that people actually buy. They do need those things, but most people don't even know that they need those things. What it really comes down to is what they want out of those things. So great marketing doesn't detail all the things. And when I look at advisor marketing, so often exactly what I see, it's our services. They detail their services. But what great marketing actually does is it speaks to the end state. So it speaks to not the service, but the outcome of the service. What the transformation is going to be as a result of working with the advisor. And so, just for example, let's say that you're giving away a report, and that report is part of a lead capture mechanism for your business. So you've got this, let's say it's a concept about, I'm trying to think of a good example. Let's say we're dealing with business owners, okay? And you want to help them with their exit planning. Well, exit planning for a business is something that they may or may not know that they need. However, if you lay this out for them, like, your business is your baby. You want to make sure that you can exit and live the way you want to live, but that your business goes on, that your employees are taken care of, that when you no longer have an income from that business, your lifestyle doesn't change. This is just an off-the-cuff example. So you start speaking to all of this end state. And then when you create marketing, it's never about the service. It's about the thing that the service enables. The same thing is with retirement. And I think a lot of people are probably better at that because they've heard enough and they've seen enough to say, okay, well, it's about peace of mind, and it's about, securing income and things of that nature. But it actually, it's a little bit more than that, because that's what a lot of other advisors are saying too. So let's just say that we're dealing with retirement. You have to go a little deeper. You have to peel back the layers and find out what the actual worries are, what the pains are, what the frustrations are. And then you have to find each of those corresponding outcomes that resolve that problem. And then those are the things you detail. Solve this, solve this, solve this, solve this, solve this. And then you have better outcomes.
So as you're talking, Robert, I'm reminded of a study that Vanguard had done looking around Advisor Alpha. And what they identified was this possibility, the notion that, the behavioral aspects of what an advisor delivers represents the largest portion of the value that's being delivered, not investment management, not tax efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. It's maybe the hand-holding aspect of it all. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think those are valuable aspects of what we do. I don't know if people are buying the hand holding as much as they are buying the peace of mind or the sense of security that they get from that hand holding. And so the tendency would be to say, we're going to hold your hand and walk you through this whole process. But it might actually be that the better way to approach that would be to actually talk about or share an example. We had a client, like this is how I would actually do it, just to be specific. We have a client who, her husband did all of her financial work for her. He managed all her accounts. He wrote every check. He dealt with every statement. He had all the dealings with the advisor. And she had never done any of that before on her own. when he died unexpectedly, she had to take all that over.
Yeah.
So what did we do? Well, we sat down with her. She brought everything in a box. We sorted it out piece by piece. We put all of it into a binder, every single statement, every single account, got it organized, helped her reset all of her passwords, and started giving her consolidated monthly reports, made sure that she knew how to balance her checkbook. Okay, now that's an example. So how do you take that example and make it into a marketing campaign?
Mm.
One of our advisors had a 8-week nurturing sequence, and in every email that went out for 8 weeks, it talked about a different way that he had helped a client, a different example, a real life example. So now you're not saying, hey, we'll help you get organized, we'll hold your hand. You're actually saying, here's an example of what we did. Here's how we could do it for you. Here's an example of what we did. And those stories of transformation are much more sticky and effective than just saying, we're going to hold your hand.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about doing something that I'm sure many advisors don't necessarily do, which is to audit their client's experience. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is something that we would do every year, and it was how it started was with an audit. You have to see what people experience when they are engaging with your business. And our tendency can be to just outsource everything. We outsource our website, we outsource our marketing. We have our front desk person. We sort of outsource the front desk experience. And we don't always really know firsthand what people are going through. So the idea is you have to really become the client, and you have to take off your advisor business owner hat, and you have to really try to get in the mind frame of being a new prospect engaging with your brand and go through literally everything. I still do this with my own company. I go online, I submit an inquiry, I use a alias as an email address and phone number. I look at the forms that I'm submitting. I experience them on mobile. I experience them on desktop. I listen to the calls that I get. I listen to the voicemails. And we use call monitoring software. Advisors can do that too. I book an appointment. I look at the appointment confirmations that go out. I follow in the old days, look at the appointment confirmation that goes out, look at the way the directions are, drive to the office, look at the exterior, like really look. How do your bushes look? How do your sidewalks look? How does your front rug look? How does the glass look? How clean is the bathroom? These are a bit nitpicky, some would say, but I would argue that the people that you want as clients probably have, in many cases, high-end experiences. They probably go to nice hotels. They probably upgrade their staterooms on cruise ships. They probably drive nice cars. They appreciate quality. And, you can get to a point where you don't notice that there's cigarette butts in the planter next to the door of your office. And you can get to the point where you don't notice that the glass is smudged. How does your office smell? And all these things, if you really obsess over that and you audit every aspect of it, you'll find, the other day I was going through this for my business, and I found that one of the links on a form that is sent to new prospects was a dead link. So I got a brand new prospect. They're interested in my business. They open this first communication from us. They click on a link and it takes them to a dead page. Now, I'm a marketing company. Boy, if I'm sending my own customers to dead links, why would they trust me with their marketing? Now, my marketing team, something happened. We changed our website hosting, and there's excuses. But that's why I audit my client experience. And advisors need to do the exact same thing. Make sure that every step from beginning to end, even things like Zoom, a lot of advisors do virtual meetings. What's in your background? My wife helped me design my background. I wanted it to be professional but creative. Here in my office now, I do have my dog back there, which is not the greatest. But I do want people, when I engage with them online, to see something professional. They don't see my bed. They don't see my ceiling fan. And advisors, it's the same. How do you show up dressed on Zoom? How's your have you invested in your lighting, in your audio setup? Boy, I could go on and on. Audit your experience. Everything a client or prospect sees, you better know what it looks like, and you better make sure it's really nice and tight.
Yeah. So in a world where maybe fewer people are going into an office to talk to an advisor and much of it is being done digitally, talk about digital marketing and sort of like what are the key elements of what someone should be thinking about when they think about digital marketing in this day and age.
Yeah, there's so much. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's another 2-hour
Right.
conversation, but I'll summarize it this way. If you ask most advisors what digital marketing is, they think of leads. How do I get leads? That's not the right way to think about digital marketing. Getting leads is one small component. Getting leads is no different than getting an introduction. So if you can take what you know about business from a bricks and mortar perspective and apply it online, then you start to really have success. And here's what I mean. What happens after an introduction? There has to be some relationship building. Same online. So if you have an opt-in, we'll call that a lead, right? Email address, phone number. What has to happen to build a relationship? Well, nurturing. So what are you doing to build trust and credibility? And then let's say you're building trust and credibility. Now what has to happen? Okay, they're starting to know you and trust you, but you still have to start a conversation. So that's different. You can send somebody communications that help build trust and credibility. It doesn't mean they're going to be ready to talk to you. So you have to start to use open loops that leave a gap. So you mention a problem, you don't solve that problem, you leave it open to get them curious to start a conversation. Now you have a conversation going. So in real life, how does that apply? Well, you have to reach out, you have to give them a reason to talk to you, you have to be proactive. Same thing online. And if that stops, then the relationship building stops, the opportunity stops. Or for example, let's say you're having a conversation with someone and then they just suddenly totally change the subject on you, go in a different direction, and then they do it again and again. Well, this is what advisors do with their digital marketing, because they just send out random communications of whatever happens to be in their newsletter to everybody, or whatever their website happens to be auto posting for everyone. But if you think about this like a relationship or a conversation, what do you want? You have a person who's interested in topic A. You want to keep discussing different aspects of topic A. So that's where campaign marketing comes in. You want to make sure you stay on the same theme, building on that theme and build. If the person's interested in retirement, don't start talking to them about college planning.
Right.
So this is where that trust building, that nurturing along the right themes that you know someone is interested in comes into play. And if you apply those principles to all of your marketing with the goal of starting a conversation, and you don't drop that ball anywhere, then you have a flywheel that just keeps generating business for you.
Yeah. So I want to double back on the topic that I should have asked about earlier, which is this notion of most advisors or many advisors rely on referrals as the way to generate the next new client. Is that part of the marketing package, or is that sort of different?
Yeah, I mean, referrals are amazing. They're the lifeblood of many advisors' businesses. The challenge is getting them consistently and getting enough of them to maintain your business. So that process I was talking about that happens before somebody becomes a client, it's part of a total framework, right? So if you go through the steps of the framework, it's get noticed, earn contacts, build credibility, start conversations, win clients. 5 steps. But see, now, where do the referrals come in? Well, that's next. Then you get to deepen relationships, and those deepened relationships lead to referrals. And those referrals go back to step 1, getting noticed, right? Because now they're getting noticed by means of the introduction. And that a referral has to go through the same thing. Now you have to build trust, you have to earn their contact information, build credibility with them, deepen the start the conversation, and then expand the relationship. So it's a flywheel. One feeds the other. So after you have a client, the process by which you continue to market them to turn them into a client who's giving you referrals needs to continue. So for example, we have a very common application that we recommend to advisors. It's called a 90-day new client onboarding campaign. Over the course of the first 3 months, they get a series of systematic communications to make sure they're feeling well nurtured. I'm not talking about a newsletter. I'm talking about one-to-one communications, but they're automated. So from the advisor or from their assistant, meaningful communications. Day 90, it's, hey, you've already been a client with us for 3 months. Can you believe it? Time sure flies. Please reply and let me know how the experience has been. I've got a quick form to fill out. Just give me, it only takes 30 seconds. It's 5 quick questions. I want to hear from you so we can improve. Client clicks on it. It's a form. How do you rate us? And there's a rating system. And the last question is, who do you know that would also benefit from going through a process like what we've just completed together?
Yeah.
You know? Okay, now that's one opportunity. But that's just one. They may or may not take you up on it. So every year, do you have a referral campaign that goes out to them? Every year, at least, sometimes even some advisors do this quarterly. Do you have an event for all your new clients? Quarterly new client mixer. Bring them together, welcome them, give them the opportunity to bring guests. Give them a reason to bring guests. Maybe you're doing a wine tasting. Maybe you have it at a driving range and you have an instructor there to help them with their game. Maybe, whatever it is, whatever you're into. Do you have an annual client event or a dance or a party where, a movie in the park where clients can come and bring friends? All these are just examples. There's a lot more than this. But if you're doing this systematically and consistently, you're asking for the referrals in the right way, not in a, grungy kind of way, but in a professional way. And you're giving them lots of opportunity to give you those referrals. And that's part of your marketing plan. And it's happening all the time. Then referrals become more predictable.
Mm. So something relatively new to talk about is the SEC now allows RIAs to use testimonials in their marketing. Help us understand what they can and can't do and how effective they might be.
Yeah, it's amazing now that that's opened up. There is nothing better than social proof in your marketing. We talked a lot about trust building and credibility. I even mentioned how you can speak to the transformation by using specific examples of how you've helped clients. Well, in the past, those would have had to be anecdotal. Now they can be specific. And that is amazing. When you can actually get it first person from a client. So one of the things we've actually created is a campaign for gathering client testimonials. And that's really what you need, is you need to actively get them from clients. And then you need to have a mechanism for using them and publishing them. Now, there are limitations. There are restrictions about, how you use rating and review services. And, you have to be fair and balanced. You can't just cherry pick all the best ones. And that's where I'd recommend, having some compliance counsel, legal counsel, help you navigate that. But what you should absolutely be doing is, number one, collecting them. Number two, featuring them on your website. Number three, featuring them on your automated marketing campaigns, in your nurturing emails, and in your social posts on social media. These should be part of your ongoing business practice. And you should be, wherever possible, if you have clients who are articulate and really look the part, you should be bringing a video crew in, and you should be actually interviewing them on video and getting them to actually speak to the value that you're delivering to them on camera and using that in your marketing as well.
Yeah. So, Robert, there's a lot in the book we haven't covered, but we're sort of at the end of our time, and I want to give you an opportunity to either cover anything that we've missed or anything that just bears reemphasizing.
I mean, there's so much that we talked about, and there's a lot that we could. I think what I would say is all of the things we chatted about today are just aspects of what an overall marketing strategy needs to be. And that's the most important thing. Do you have a strategy? A lot of advisors just sort of piecemeal. They buy whatever marketing kind of falls in their lap. Local businesses come by to offer them advertising opportunities. Marketing companies sell them a marketing tool, chasing the latest shiny object. But if you can step back and analyze that whole process, right? How am I getting noticed? How am I earning contacts? How am I building trust with those contacts? How am I starting conversations with those contacts? And then after they become clients, how am I deepening the relationship and systematically generating referrals? Now, every one of those pillars is important. And if instead of just doing whatever, you start to build marketing strategy into each of those pillars. What is your method for continually getting noticed? How are you going to get noticed in as many places as possible, as often as possible by your ideal client? What are the ways you're going to do that? And that has 4 or 5 items. This is how I get noticed. Okay, now you're getting noticed. Let's see. You got to earn their contact information. So how are you going to do that? So these are all the ways I generate opt-ins. I do it with this lead magnet. I do it with this offer. I do it with this type of registration. I do it with... So every one of those components needs to be in your strategy, and every one of those needs to be supported. And when you start to look at your marketing that way, you create a system that's repeatable and predictable and that scales. And that's where advisors that really grow quickly and keep growing have it made. That's what they're doing. It's not happening by accident. It's not happening because they do random acts of marketing, as we call them, but because they have a strategy.
Yeah. Well, Robert, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our listeners today. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you for having me. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Advisor podcast brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe through iTunes, Spotify, or our website at www.investmentsandwealth.org/podcast to get the latest episodes of our Exceptional Advisor podcast series. For additional resources, updates on events, and exclusive membership deals, visit www.investmentsandwealth.org.